Hey, what's up guys? Sam here, and we're going to be doing the weekly stock review for the week ending in September 12th, 2025. So yet another week is in the books. Pretty interesting week, certainly lots of big moving pieces in the market. Tesla one of them, Oracle another. So lots of movement, lots of short squeezes in some of the junkier parts of the market, which is pretty interesting. So let's dive in. Let's see what we can find here in the indexes, and then towards the middle end of the video, we're going to be looking at the individual sectors and just seeing if there's any edge in any specific sector. You know, kind of outside of the things that we've already been talking about. We've been talking in these videos, these Friday videos, we've been talking about the barbell trade. So the barbell trade is basically has been Mag 7 on one end and IWM on the other. And even with Mag 7, it's not even all of Mag 7, it's taking turns. So there's been things that have been getting hit like Netflix, and then of course there's things that are just popping off like crazy like Tesla. So I still think this is going to be the predominant thing that I have to disprove in this video to see if this makes sense to get away from this at all going into next week. So we'll see if we can do that by the end of the video, so be sure to stay tuned to the very end. So let's dive in here on SPY. Another week in the books and another up week here, and just kind of in a series of melting up green candles. You can see for yourself here, just pretty much as nice as it gets. Not a whole lot there to cover. If this were to go to its full target, then I would actually be looking somewhere up here. And this seems a little crazy, so I admit that this seems a little nuts. But if this gets to its full target, the target is right around 694 on SPY. And the way that I got that target is just by measuring this move here. So you measure this move from high to low, and then it gives you your upper retracements. So the first level was 649, and you can see that it got there and found a little bit of resistance and kind of base there for a while, and now it's had multiple days trading above that, which is good. I don't really have anything above that up until the next target. Of course, you know, it won't get there in a straight line. Or maybe it does in this market, but that is the upper target that I have on it. In terms of the indicators or anything like that, there's really nothing to update here. The only point of concern, and we'll see if this is even remotely an issue, and I only point it out because everything else is perfect, right? So you don't need a whole lot of assistance in reading beautiful green candles, holding a beautiful green wave the whole way up. But you have the declining momentum there on the weekly time frame. So again, that's me very much splitting hairs in terms of looking for an issue, but it is something that kind of stands out to me a little bit. So next up is the Qs. So massive improvement here by the Qs. I probably should have the same level there. So again, nothing really to see here on the Qs. Ever so slightly weaker, but I really wouldn't knock it. The only knock on it is that the MACD is not aligned, but that's a very small input into the score. The SPY was 100, this is 90, very serviceable. Good looking breakout so far. Of course, you know, you want to see it hold above that breakout level, otherwise it becomes a little bit of a problem. So I really wouldn't want to see this get below 580. But aside from that, you can see for yourself that everything here is just very much aligned and clean, and no major issues to speak of there. Let's go to IWM. IWM didn't have a great day today. It did have a pretty good day yesterday, but it did not have a great day today. But really, it's just an inside day in the context of an otherwise very serviceable looking chart. I don't think the market will end its run until this monthly squeeze, which I'm pulling up on the left, fires long. So to my eye, I think that IWM here has a date with right around 270 on a breakout on this monthly time frame. And, it wouldn't be all that surprising to get there very quickly. That is very much an IWM thing to do. But you can see here that the monthly squeeze looks pretty ready to me. You're getting your first green candles here over the last 2 months. Nothing is overdone here, and you are max bull. So initial target on IWM. Of course, respect the previous highs, right? Always got to respect that high, 244.46, or I guess in this case, 245. But if it gets above that, there actually is a decent chance it could go up there and grab that 267 longer term target. I wouldn't look for something to change that until that target is reached, or unless you get some major reversal on the weekly chart. Without a major reversal on the weekly chart, I think that the bulls are completely in control, and I think they're going to try to drive it into those upper targets. So then let's kind of take a look around the peripheral parts of the market. Of course, the indexes right now are very much just exactly what they present themselves to be, which is just very nice and clean. And of course, the volatility has been relatively muted. It has a vibe of a melt up. So that is certainly the case to disprove, not to prove. So looking here at the dollar, this isn't something we look at all the time, and we won't spend too much time on it. But again, if this all breaks short, which would be the path of least resistance, and of course next week is Fed, so anything happens on Fed. But I would imagine this would break short, and of course that's going to help equities. So then let's move over to HYG, which I give you the same disclaimer every week that we look at HYG not as something that we're going to trade, but rather as something that is a metric for risk on or risk off. So if HYG is bullish, that is a good implication for stocks. So you want to keep buying all the things as long as HYG stays bullish. And this looks like acceptance to me so far above that breakout point, which is the magenta line. The chart, 100% and 100%. So it doesn't get much better than that. So that's still 100% on the bull side. If we go to the VIX products, my only slight concern, and it's not even a concern that I can necessarily even act on at the moment, is how compressed the VIX has gotten lately. I don't know exactly how much room there is. They could actually take it lower. Could we actually see a 13 print on VIX? It's certainly possible, and especially if the IWM squeeze wants to fire long, that would certainly help facilitate a lower VIX. But here as well, I don't really have anything overly dangerous at the moment. The squeeze histogram looks bearish, which is good for market bulls. This doesn't look ready to me. You see how the squeeze histogram, it's forming a squeeze on the weekly time frame, but it's not really anywhere back to the zero line. So it would have to kind of continue to grind up, make the histogram bars closer to zero, and then somewhere around October is when I would be looking for a potential issue there with the VIX, because by October the timing on this would be nice and flat on the squeeze histogram. I don't see that yet, so of course always stay cautious, but I don't see a major issue yet on that, and it does look like it's going to be more of an October kind of thing, if it's a thing at all. The VVIX here, we look at the VVIX because it moves before the VIX. So same thing here, not a lot really going on, and the timing on this would be closer to very beginning of October would be kind of where I'd start looking a little bit more closely at that. But at least for now, just touching base on it, I don't see any issues. So we're going to go and jump over into the sector work. So we do the big picture stuff just so you can kind of follow along, especially if you're new. We start with the big picture stuff, which is the indexes, and then we kind of look at the peripheral stuff around it that really matters. So we looked at the dollar, we looked at bonds, we looked at that through HYG, we looked at VIX products, right? And almost everything is aligned for the bulls. If I could point out, just split a couple of hairs here, the only issues that I see is the squeeze histogram on the weekly time frame on SPY is starting to round back down. So Usually when that happens in a bull market, they'll find a spark to generate a quick burst higher, which would spike the histogram back up to the upside. And that's probably based on everything that we're looking at. My expectation for next week is that Powell is the spark to the upside for that squeeze histogram. Now, of course, that is me just speculating on the quality of the squeeze histogram, but that would be something that would make sense based on what we've seen. And next week is pretty important, but it is also pretty baked into the cake at this point that Powell will be cutting at least 25 basis points. There's a potential for 50, but 25 is pretty much locked in for next week. So we're going to check out some sectors here, see what the best place would be to focus on now that we have we've reinforced our bullish stance, right? We started with a bullish stance because it's just obvious, but then of course we want to try to pick it apart. We want to say, okay, well, it's easy to be bullish, but is there any reason not to be bullish? I didn't see really any meaningful reason not to stay bullish, especially at all-time highs with no signals whatsoever in the counter trend direction. Let's take all of that we just learned, and we'll move it over to the sector work and see if we can kind of narrow down where we want to focus, and also to see if we can disprove that barbell theory, right? The Mag 7 versus IWM. Maybe it's broadening out, maybe something else is waking up. Let's see. Before we do that, I'd like to ask that you leave us a like on the video, drop us a comment down below. Comments actually help us out more than likes, so in order to get the algorithm to bless our videos, help us out by dropping a comment. It can be a question, or just let us know what you're going to have for dinner tonight. What's your favorite drink? What's your dog's name? What's your cat's name? I don't have a cat or a dog. My mom has a cat named Cold. I'm doing a 5-day water fast, so my dinner will be nothing. It'll be a glass of water. Very exciting. And if I had a question to ask, I would ask what happens next with crypto. So I'll try to answer my own question at the end of the video. Let's move over to the sectors. So the SPY is going to be tough to beat, right? It's tough to beat a max bull 100. I think that ARK here is actually setting up very nicely. Of course, Tesla is going to be a huge component of that, and potentially even something like Coinbase. We had a trade in the room on Coinbase, but ended up being kind of a lame trade. We got in at 4 and got out at 460, so could have got out at 6 this morning, but my internet went out, which is very tragic. But looking at ARK here, this is something new that's opened up this week. It has a very good score of a 90, and it has a very serviceable looking squeeze. So I'm definitely interested in something like that. Of course, Tesla is going to be the primary driver of that. XLC remains really bullish, so nothing to really see there. Financials have regained their 100% value, so that's still in play. Don't have a ton of interest in the industrials here. I think that this is just too difficult, although you can probably find some spots of good setups there. You can see that it's got a 0% score, but it does have a squeeze. So for now, I must cross that off the list. Of course, staples are going to be crossed off the list. Utilities are going to be crossed off the list. I do think healthcare might be in play, but I can't look at it with any real seriousness this week because it's so far below the SPY. I'm not looking for blues, I'm looking for greens. So crossing that one off. And what does that leave us? Well, let's cross off home builders too, because although it is green, it's not as good as the SPY. And so that leaves us with XLK, ARK, XLY, XLC, and SMH. So what theme do we see here? Well, aside from XLF, the financials on the left, everything here is tech, right? XLC is Google and Meta. SMH is Nvidia and others, Avgo. XLY is Amazon and Tesla. XLK is going to be Microsoft, Microsoft, Apple, and Nvidia. So it's a very tech-heavy sector focus, right? If I can say one good thing is that the ARK here has started to play ball a little bit. And so that tells me, okay, well, we want to stay bullish, and based on what we've seen here on these sectors, right, just based on the colors and nothing else, we want to stay focused on tech, in my opinion. And so then lastly, what I would do is go to the indexes tab, and I want to see what this QQQ equal weight over here on the left is looking like, because last week it was neutral, and I want to see if it's improved at all. It's improved slightly, but it's still neutral. So here's kind of the reason that I've been telling you about the barbell trade, and I would stick with it. I have not seen enough evidence as we've done this video together to justify getting away from the barbell, meaning focusing on mega cap tech mostly. And the reason is very simple. It's this chart versus this chart, right? So check out this squeeze here on the equal weight QQQ. If you're unfamiliar with that, the equal weight QQQ is basically the Qs if you removed all of the weighting off of Tesla and Apple and Amazon and Microsoft and Google and all the big ones, right? So if you equalize the weight, every stock in the NASDAQ became equal weighted, what would it look like? And I think it's a pretty cool chart just because it shows you a different perspective on breadth, market breadth. And this is telling me that market breadth inside the NASDAQ is not particularly great, right? That's why the score is so neutral compared to the NASDAQ, which has the input of, a large NVIDIA or Google input into it. So the real answer is going to be found between these two charts right here, right? On the left, we have the Mag 7 index, which I've shared with you guys on YouTube multiple times. So if you don't have it, go back and check out a previous one of my videos and you can grab it from there. And that one is a max bull 100% chart. And look at the quality of the squeeze here. You see how the squeeze histogram has a very nice upward bias to it. Whereas the chart on the right has a very good looking squeeze too. I wouldn't knock that squeeze, but it doesn't yet have the upward bias, number one. And number two, and more importantly, the score is just neutral. So can this start to repair itself pretty quickly? I think it actually can, especially because of the inclusion of ARK in the tradable basket for next week. So I do think this could start to repair itself, but at the end of the day, this is a much, much better chart than this, and this tells me to keep the barbell theory alive, meaning focus on Mag 7 and force the market to prove you wrong, basically. So I did have a question that I would ask in the comments if I were in your shoes, and that would be what happens next with crypto. And for that, let's go to Ethereum. So in the room, we did have the Coinbase trade, which made us a whopping $60 per contract. Hold on to your hats. The funny thing is, I had a choice between Coinbase or BMRN, or BMNR, the Tom Lee Bitminer company, and I bought both. But for the room, I actually sent out coin, and it ended up being a profitable trade, so I won't knock it too much. I had to buy it absolutely perfectly for it to be profitable, but it was a profitable trade. But the right trade was actually that BMNR, Bitminer. And the reason being is because that's a very nice crypto, very nice Ethereum proxy. So we also picked up some Ethereum today in the room. I did that through the ETHA. And basically just looking at Ethereum futures as a play on that. So this pattern, I think, is relatively self-explanatory, right? You have a green set of candles. You fall into a rising green cloud, and you do that with a squeeze and arrows for the last month telling you to get long. So I think crypto is going to go up. The most direct play that I see on it is ETHA. I wouldn't sleep on Coinbase, although I probably won't go back to it myself. I'll just focus on the coin itself, which is ETHA. And then I would also put in your bucket BMNR as a play on leverage Bitcoin, essentially, as a good play on that. All right, folks. Well, that is my time. Thanks as always. Make sure you drop us a like and a comment. It does help us out with the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys back in the video next week. Cheers.